So let's go to the Epstein files. Friday's release of millions of pages related to Jeffrey Epstein provided a closer look at his connection to world elites from Hollywood to Washington, Wall Street to Buckingham Palace and beyond, including many high-profile men who publicly claimed to be disgusted with the convicted sex offender and his close associate and fixer, Ghislaine Maxwell. Let's go through just some of the revelations. President Trump is mentioned more than 1,000 times in the newly released documents, reflecting a long-standing social and business connection between the two men. Previous document releases indicated Trump was listed as a passenger on Epstein's jet 8 times between 1993 and 1998. And now, the newly released documents include uncorroborated claims about Donald Trump. The White House, responding to the Miami Herald, referred to a statement on the DOJ website denying any credibility in the accusations against the president. Several other high-profile men are in the documents, including Peter Thiel, who in one of several emails was revealed to write, "That was fun. See you in 3 weeks." The context of the email exchange is unclear. Bill Gates shows up in an email written by Epstein, where Epstein claims Gates contracted an STD from a, quote, Russian girl and sought antibiotics to hide it from his wife. A spokesperson for Gates called the claims absurd and completely false. Contrary to what he said publicly, New York real estate mogul Andrew Farkas co-owned a marina with Epstein, located near Epstein's Island, and the two exchanged affectionate and crude emails. The documents reveal Farkas himself also stayed on Epstein's private island. Another revelation? Farkas gave Epstein discounts on dockage and services at the marina, which served as a gateway to what's known as Epstein's so-called Rape Island. Billionaire Richard Branson shows up in the files, too, hosting Epstein twice and exchanging friendly emails in 2013, joking about Epstein's harem and giving him advice about rehabilitating his image after Epstein's sex offender conviction. New York Giants co-owner Steve Tisch shows up hundreds of times in this latest tranche of Epstein-related files, mostly in 2013 emails where Epstein is proposing women for Tisch to meet, sending photos and bios. In one exchange, Tisch asks if a woman he met at Epstein's home is a, quote, working girl, and Epstein replies, NWVER. Then asks for Tisch's phone number, saying he doesn't like, quote, records of these conversations. Later, Epstein tells Tisch, you did well, and that the woman wants to see a play, but is freaked out about his age. In a statement, Tisch wrote in part that he did not take Epstein up on any of his invitations and never went to his island. The UK's Prince Andrew is shown in never-before-seen photos on a floor on all fours with an unidentified female, along with more exchanges with Epstein, arranging dinners and offering meetings with women. And another where Andrew invites Epstein to come here to BP, referring to Buckingham Palace. Many men whose names are in the documents had publicly and vehemently distanced themselves from the predator, but who are shown to have had seemingly friendly contact with Epstein. That includes a number of men in Donald Trump's orbit and his administration. Elon Musk had said in 2019 that Epstein tried repeatedly to get me to visit his island. I declined. Yet, according to the newly released emails from 2012, he asked, are you coming by helicopter? Probably just Tallulah and me. What day/night will be the wildest party on your island? Musk has denied attending that party, nor ever visiting the island. Trump's Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, in 2025, publicly described Epstein as gross and the greatest blackmailer ever, and that he had resolved years earlier never to be in the same room with him again, suggesting he had cut ties with Epstein. But according to the newly released documents, Lutnick arranged and carried out a private lunch with Epstein and his family on Epstein's private island. And Trump's newly nominated pick for chair of the Federal Reserve appears to have been invited to one of Epstein's social events. We do not know if he attended. One other notable, the director of the newly released documentary Melania, Brett Ratner, appears in the newly released documents, including this photo of Ratner on a couch next to Jeffrey Epstein, with Ratner's arm around an unidentified female, and Epstein sitting shoulder to shoulder with another female, both of their faces obscured.
Multiple media outlets have reached out to Brett Ratner, who apparently you would think, you don't know, but you would think would be kind of on a media tour because of this Melania movie. No comment there.
Fascinating.
Lisa Rubin, everyone waited 6 weeks at least to see these documents. Apparently there are more that maybe we'll never see. These have redactions. And one of the reasons why there was a wait, lawmakers claimed that the documents needed to be poured through to protect the victims. And yet, victims were not protected, it appears, in these documents. Tell us about it.
No, Mika, I spent a lot of time looking at these documents, and obviously you can't boil the ocean over a weekend. 3 million pages is quite a bit. But one of the things I found was I counted the names of more than 40 known and suspected survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell just in my cursory review of the documents. And of course, on Friday, one of the first things I found was a driver's license of a known survivor, someone who testified at Ghislaine Maxwell's trial with her photo completely unredacted, something that Todd Blanche had pledged in his Friday press conference that we would absolutely not see. He told us that photos of every woman except for Ghislaine Maxwell would be fully redacted, and yet this was a driver's license with the woman's picture fully visible, her name fully visible, and yet someone had taken the time to black out her address. And Mika, now I can tell you and our viewers, I've had the opportunity to speak with this woman who gave me permission to share her story this morning. Her name is Anushka DiGiorgio. She was one of the 4 women who testified at Ghislaine Maxwell's trial. And in addition to her driver's license, one of the things that I discovered was handwritten notes from and a typewritten memorandum from a July 2021 meeting she had with prosecutors. And the purpose of that meeting was to assess her credibility on the stand at Ghislaine Maxwell's trial by probing her about the most intimate details of her life and background. Things like her romantic history, her history of substance abuse and her subsequent recovery and sobriety. Things like the names of her sponsors in recovery and the names of men that she had dated and so on and so forth. Anushka DiGiorgio found out that these documents were in the public domain because I contacted her lawyer. And on Friday, she received a text from her lawyer notifying her about this. Within 24 hours, she wrote a scathing email to senior leadership at the Southern District of New York. You'll remember that the Southern District of New York's U.S. Attorney's Office was where Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein were both prosecuted. They also played a very prominent role in the review of these documents. Anushka DiGiorgio telling them that they had re-traumatized her and opened up wounds that she had spent years trying to recover from, as well as exposing her to legal, professional, and personal harm by exposing these details about her life. As of yesterday morning, these documents belonging to Anushka DiGiorgio were removed from the Department of Justice's website. But did she get a response from anyone at the Department of Justice? Neither she nor her lawyers did.
And so important, Lisa, to keep the victims front of mind here. So thank you for doing that. Let's talk, though, about, about 3 million documents were dropped. There's another about 3 million, we believe, that are still out there. Talk to us about whether you think we'll ever see those.
Yeah, when will we see those?
And the fact that there are so many questions raised. A lot of people spent a lot of time sifting through these over the weekend. There's some really outlandish, salacious stuff in there. We don't know if it's true or not. There doesn't seem to be more investigations coming. And it's just going to raise far more questions about what we don't know now and may never will.
Let's start with, are we going to see more drops of documents? At least according to the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, we are not going to. He said that the department, in addition to producing nearly 3 million pages, was also withholding another 3 million pages for a variety of reasons. Those include reasons that are permitted by statute, including for the protection of these victims. But he also took the liberties to say that they had withheld documents for reasons that the law does not permit. And that includes where the department believes that they are privileged documents. What does that mean? if they reflect internal conversations at the Department of Justice that are reflective of internal decision making, or they think they're attorney-client communications or attorney work product, that will be the basis, according to Mr. Blanche, for withholding or redacting scores of documents that we may never see. Now, we know that in these documents are some of the things that people like Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie, two of the leaders pressing for the passage of this Epstein Files Transparency Act, most wanted to see. What am I talking about? The draft prosecution memo, the draft indictment that was written in Florida in 2007, 2008, where prosecutors were prepared to charge Jeffrey Epstein with 30-plus federal counts based on the experiences of 19 women. But there are still, in the files today, Jonathan, lots of women whose names are visible. I checked last night for others of the victims' names still there. And of course, there is no enforcement mechanism for Congress. Mr. Blanche stood up before everyone and said, if members of Congress want to see some more of these materials, including unredacted, we'll give them access to it. But if I'm a member of the House Oversight Committee, I'm scratching my head right now thinking, isn't that the very thing that I've had a subpoena outstanding for months to get? Why is it that the department couldn't be responsive to our subpoena, and only now, after dumping millions of pages, they'll tell us that it's accessible to us to look for the needle in a haystack? That doesn't quite seem just or fair.